We're going to start off with a presentation by Mathew Boden about emotional awareness, emotional regulation. So without any further introduction, I just want to turn it over to you, Mathew. So thank you so much for joining us here in Beer, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm honored to be here among all of you monastics, learning and teaching and being here. It's a real pleasure of mine to learn about how you guys think about emotions and how you guys think about the things that I'm going to talk about from a Western perspective. So I want to start out by saying my talk is titled Emotional Awareness and Emotion Regulation, Related Factors that Determine Whether Emotions Are Helpful or Harmful. Now, I want to point out right here at the beginning that you probably already know these concepts of emotional awareness, emotion regulation, emotion, and you experience these in your everyday life. But my purpose here is to provide some definitions that come from Western science, basically an empirical, systematic science, and so I'm going to be trying to kind of broaden your viewpoint of these concepts. So people experience emotions in situations that are important to them. One might feel pride when he wins a debate or a fight. One might feel fear when she is near a spider, surprise or happiness when visited by a person he hasn't seen in a while, and sadness when a loved one dies. Now I'm going to start out by defining emotions, and I'm going to do so by explaining in this slide how emotions occur over time. So in other words, emotions have multiple components that occur in a specific sequence or order. And the first thing I'm circling on this slide are situations that cause emotions because they are important to a person. So in specific situations, there are things that might predispose or lead to an emotion happening. And I'm going to give an example here that I'm going to carry through this whole presentation. So a debate is a situation that is important to me, and I may have the goal of winning the debate. Because of this, I may be likely to experience an emotion in that situation, in that context. Second, a person will focus his or her attention on particular stimuli in these situations. So again, a debate will make this more clear. For example, when debating, my attention will be focused on my partner in the debate. Third, a person will assess the importance of a situation in terms of, for example, how pleasant that situation is, how novel it is. Now, appraisals are what we call these moment-by-moment evaluations. They're typically fast and they occur outside of our awareness. And when situations are appraised as important, an emotion will result. For example, when debating, I might appraise my debate partner as much smarter than I, and the debate itself as challenging. Now, fourth, people have an emotional response when they appraise a situation as being important to them. So when people think about emotions, they typically are thinking about this emotion response. They're not thinking about these other three things that happen before the emotion response occurs. So I'm going to focus in a little bit on the emotion response right now. So emotion responses, I want to make clear, emotions, according to Western science, don't just occur in our mind. They occur in our entire body. And so they're multifaceted, and they're what we call whole body. So they happen all over our bodies. Now on this slide, I have numbered the different aspects of the emotion response, these different components. So the first one I've numbered is attention. We attend to the stimuli that cause emotions. So in the depiction of the two people arguing I have on the slide, the person on the right is attending to the person on the left. Two, we represent our subjective experience. This is what we call feelings. This is what we know as feelings. And so in this depiction, you see the person thinking, I feel angry. 3, emotions are often expressed as behavior. The arguing person is saying things, you are wrong, and might become so angry that he leaves the argument. And 4, behavior is supported by physical changes in our body. The arguing person's heart rate is beating, and they're sweating as they are in the argument. Now, the emotion response coordinates these different aspects, and because of this coordination, we think of emotions as being generally helpful or adaptive, and I'm gonna focus in on that in 1 minute. Before that, I'll say that we have the example that the person might win the argument as the emotion coordinates these different aspects of the emotion response, or he might decide to leave the argument if he's losing the argument. Now, one thing I want to take a step out here from my slide and say that Western science thinks of emotions as we think of people as having evolved over time throughout history. So people, we think of them as, a long history of human beings. And emotions are something that happens in people over time. It's a thing that helps us to live as human beings, and they are helpful in certain ways. And to explain this a little more clearly, I'll give the example of anxiety. So you might think of anxiety as like, why does anxiety occur? How can anxiety be helpful for me? How is it helpful for me to feel scared? Well, you can think about if you're walking down a dark street at night and you start to feel that anxiety, you start to feel the nervousness in your body, you start thinking to yourself, I'm scared, what's gonna happen to myself? Well, that is gonna be helpful in certain situations in which there might be threat lurking around the corners. There might be a dog that's going to jump out and attack you, or there might be a person that actually wants to harm you. Now, we think of the emotion, this emotion response, as coordinating this thought in your mind, I am anxious, coordinating the body, giving me motivation so if I have to run or I have to fight, I can do so, and I can get myself out of that situation and survive. And so emotions have this kind of helpful, this adaptive value. And that's why Western science thinks that emotions continually occur in us. Every generation has emotions. Animals have even been shown to have emotions. You can see emotional expressions in dogs, in elephants. And you see that what's happening there is the emotion is helping that animal to survive. And one reason that emotions are, somebody asked in an earlier question, why are emotions out of our control? Why can't I control my emotions? Well, one reason is that if you had to think about your emotions, they wouldn't be as adaptive. If I'm in that dark street corner and I have to think to myself, should I be scared? I wonder. Let me think about it for a minute. Before you get done thinking about it, that dog might have attacked you. That person might have jumped out and hurt you. And so, because you don't have to think about it, this will all come together with outside of your conscious awareness, and you'll already be running down the street before you have to waste time thinking about it, basically. And I'm only giving you the example of anxiety. We think of all emotions like this. But I also want to point out that just like Buddhist philosophy and Buddhist science, we also think of emotions as being maladaptive or unhelpful in certain situations. So if I were to go back to my hotel room after I escaped that dark corner, that darkness, the dog didn't attack me and it helped me get out of the situation, but I go back to my room and I just sit there and think, I'm so anxious, I'm still anxious. That's not going to be too helpful. That's actually going to be harmful for me. So we really think of emotions as these things that are both helpful or harmful. If they go on too long, they're too intense, they're too strong, they might actually be harmful to us. So I want to keep moving on in my talk here. And I'm going to talk a little bit now about emotion regulation. So because emotions do not always help us, they're not always so helpful, we use strategies to change or regulate them. And this is what we call emotion regulation. There are numerous emotion regulation strategies, and any of them can be used to increase, maintain, decrease, or avoid an emotional response. So you can change any of your types of emotions that you have. And as an example that was used before, I'm going to again use the example of distraction. You might switch your attention away from an emotional stimulus. Thus, you might distract yourself from the injection you'll receive at a doctor's office, and by doing that, your fear will go down, you'll get the shot, everything will be okay. Another example is cognitive reappraisal. Again, this was brought up earlier. Reappraisal is what we call a cognitive change strategy. In other words, we change the way we think about an emotional situation to change the emotions we feel. And in this example I'm giving, you might think to yourself, you have this pain in your back, and you might be thinking, this back pain is ruining my happiness. I can't take it anymore. And then you use a cognitive reappraisal strategy to change it to, this back pain is helping me grow. It's helping me to grow stronger. Many people suffer from much worse pain. And by doing this change in my mind, I might reduce my sadness and frustration and increase and maintain my happiness. Now, the thing about emotion regulation is we first need to be aware of our emotions to be able to regulate them in adaptive ways so that they're helpful for us. So this is what we call emotional awareness. Emotional intelligence is a similar construct to emotional awareness. Now, there's multiple aspects to emotional awareness. I'm showing you on this slide that there's these big aspects: attention to emotions, understanding of emotions, and you can further break those big facets down to smaller subfacets. So attention to emotions just means how much you pay attention to your emotions. How much you actually, when you feel something, how much do you actually pay attention to that feeling that you have in your body or your mind? And you might do this voluntarily or involuntarily. So the easiest way to explain the difference between those two is, if I'm in a debate, I'm feeling anxious, and I'm paying attention to the anxiety, and I'm not paying attention to my debate partner, but I wish I was paying attention to the debate partner so I could win that debate, or I could do a good job of explaining the concept. That's involuntary attention to your emotions. It's just your attention is pulled there without your purpose. On the other hand, you might win the debate, you might feel happy, and then you might pay attention to it because it makes you feel so good, and you put your attention on that happiness. That's voluntary attention to emotions. Similarly, understanding of emotions is the extent to which you understand your emotions. Very clear. Now, there's two aspects to understanding of emotions. One is the extent to which you know the specific type of emotion you experience. So when you feel an emotion, there's specific types of emotions you might feel. You might feel anxiety, you might feel anger, you might feel sadness, you might feel happiness. The extent to which you know which one of those you feel when you feel an emotion is what we call type clarity. On the other hand, the extent to which you know what causes your emotions, is it that you just ate a good lunch that you feel happy? Is it because you're around all your friends that you feel happy? Is it because you're thinking about, this is going to be over soon and I get to go home and just relax? All of those are causes of emotions, and the extent to which you know which one of those led to your happiness right now, that's what we call source clarity. Now, people do not either have or have no emotional awareness. So numerous research studies have demonstrated that you can fall anywhere on this dimension of attention to emotions and understanding of emotions. So you might be in the middle of attention to emotions. You pay a medium attention to emotions. You might have high attention to emotions. You really pay a lot of attention to it, or anywhere in between. And that's similar for understanding of emotions. Furthermore, people vary on these two dimensions, and the way that I'm going to explain this is by pretending that the purple arrows are one person, person A, and the orange arrows are another person, person B. So the purple arrows show that this person A pays a lot of attention to their emotions, but they have low understanding of emotions. They don't really understand them, so they're always thinking about how they feel, but they don't quite know how they feel. On the other hand, person B pays medium attention to emotions, not a lot, not a little, but they have a really high understanding of emotions. They really know what they feel when they feel something. And what this shows is that just because you pay a lot of attention to your emotions, just because you're focusing in on them, doesn't necessarily mean you know what's going on with your emotional state. That's a whole different dimension of emotions. You might learn about your emotions by paying attention to them, but that's not necessarily the case. You might have to do specific training to learn more about your emotions. Now, a lot of research has shown that knowing about your emotions, so having a high level of understanding of emotions, seems to always be adaptive. It's always a good thing. And my own research and others' research has demonstrated that a high levels of understanding of emotions is related to things like higher levels of well-being, higher quality of life, more positive emotions. And it's also associated, so higher levels of understanding is associated with less symptoms of psychological or mental disorders, so less anxiety disorder symptoms, less symptoms of what we call substance use disorders, an example being alcoholism is an example of a substance use disorder. Now, you can use an emotion regulation strategy at any point during when an emotion occurs. And so I'm showing you again this slide that I showed you at the beginning with the sequence of the different aspects of emotion. And you can use an emotion regulation strategy before the situation even begins. You can use emotion regulation after you're already in a situation that you know is going to cause an emotion, but before you have actually your emotion response has begun. You could also use it after the emotion response has already begun. So let me give you an example of this. Before I gave this talk today, I was getting nervous. I'm going to speak in front of so many people. I've never met any of them. I'm a little bit nervous about this. And so I used cognitive reappraisal before my emotion response had begun to say, well, you know, this crowd wants to learn. They seem like very nice people. And so I think I'm going to do okay. And because I thought that, my anxiety went down. But then I got into the talk and I saw you all sitting here and my anxiety went back up and I'm sitting here going, oh no, I'm still nervous that I'm talking in front of all you. Well, again, right now I can still use cognitive reappraisal and say, well, it looks like a lot of people are smiling at me and it looks like a lot of people are paying attention. So that makes me feel good. And again, my anxiety level can go down. You can use emotion regulation at any point in time during the emotion response. Now I'm going to describe one study that I've conducted to show that emotion regulation and emotional awareness, they work together to lead to a specific positive outcome. I'm going to explain this in detail here. So in this study, we included 75 mostly male military veterans. A veteran is a person who's been in the military in America, and they were in the Army or the Navy, the Air Force, and after they are discharged from the military, we call them a veteran. Now, veterans, of course, being in wars and being in the military can lead to what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. Basically, I'm not going to explain this in too much detail. Seisha, one of our speakers, is going to talk about this tomorrow in more detail. But in summary, post-traumatic stress disorder results from when a person experiences a traumatic event, one or more traumatic event, and what that leads to is a set of symptoms, and it's increased anxiety, increased depression, increased avoidance, so you try to avoid anything that reminds you of a traumatic event. So for example, if I got in a car accident and then I felt really nervous around cars, and anytime I see a car, my anxiety goes up and I feel kind of depressed and I never want to go out and be in a car, that's kind of that's a simple characterization of this disorder. It's not a full characterization, but it's in the realm. So what we measured in this study is understanding of emotions, this concept I've been talking about. Emotion regulation, we measured one strategy, cognitive reappraisal, and what we measured was how frequently the participants use cognitive reappraisal. Do they use it a lot? Do they use it a little? And then we measured positive emotions, so how much they experience things like happiness, peacefulness, contentment, calm. And so this is a bit of a challenge to understand this graph, so I'm going to take a little bit of time to walk us through it here. So on the y-axis, the vertical axis, that's levels of positive emotions. So the higher level, the better, the more positive emotions you feel. Now, what I want you to think about is you take the participants in my study, the 75 people, and you split them into 4 groups. You have one group that has high understanding of emotions and they frequently use cognitive reappraisal. You have another group that has high understanding of emotions, but they don't use cognitive reappraisal that much. And then you have the two other groups, the ones who have low understanding of emotions, don't use cognitive reappraisal, and then the last group, which I'll leave out for now. You can see I've circled on this graph. What I've circled is the group that has high understanding of emotions and frequently uses cognitive reappraisal. What that means is they really know their emotions, they know what's going on when they feel emotionally aroused, and then they frequently use this one strategy that I've talked about, where you change your thoughts to change how you feel. Those participants tended to experience higher levels of positive emotions over time. And what we think is that having this high understanding of emotions gives you information that tells you when it is best to use cognitive reappraisal. So cognitive reappraisal might be good in some circumstances. It might be really powerful emotion regulation strategy. But in other circumstances, for instance, when I'm getting the shot at the doctor, maybe it's better to use distraction instead of to think differently about the shot I'm going to get. Maybe it's better to just turn my attention away from that shot. And what we think is that understanding of emotions provides this information to a person. It tells a person, oh, I should use this strategy in this context. I should use this strategy in this other context. So given that increased understanding of emotions is associated with positive outcomes, it's pertinent to ask the question, can understanding of emotions be increased? And in fact, meditation practices may be one of the most powerful ways to improve understanding of emotions. Now, I show on this slide a book about a dialogue between His Holiness the Dalai Lama and one of our prominent emotion researchers, Paul Ekman, Western scientist. And they got together and discussed over time how meditation and mindfulness practices may increase emotional awareness, and through this people may live happier and fulfilling lives. And they concluded that it seems like one of the core aspects, one of the most important things that comes from meditation and mindfulness practice is this increased understanding of your own emotions, and that can really have a positive benefit on your life going forward. Now again, I'll skip a couple slides and get to this, my last slide. Now, Science for Monks, which Bryce is one of the heads of and which I'm participating in, is now collecting data to investigate whether engaging in practices such as fixed and analytical meditations increase emotional awareness and improve emotion regulation among practicing monastics in the context in which they live. Now, such research is vital not only because of the power of these practices, but because much of what we know about emotions and even about meditation in the West comes from research subjects in Western, industrialized, educated, rich, and democratic countries. Now, these countries, and a good example is America. Such countries include 12% of the world's population, so a little bit, but they produce most of the psychological research that comes out and is published in psychology journals. But a lot of great research has shown that many psychological processes, many things like emotions, attention, cognition, have some universal aspect. You and I all experience, we all know what anger is. We all know what anxiety is. We all feel that. But there's also important differences to that experience of emotions. There's important differences across cultures. And so it's really important to go into other cultures and to understand how they experience emotions, how they experience cognition, how they meditate, how they practice mindfulness. And so hopefully that's what we're going to do with the Science for Monks team currently. And I'm going to stop here and thank you very much for paying attention to me. And I hope that you enjoyed my talk.
Thank you, Matthew. That was a great introduction to emotions and emotional awareness. And we have a few minutes now. Are there any questions from the monastic graduates here about Matthew's talk?
gelangkurang kita mesti da dewa yu bimbina kogap tangbu kiran sul nangis
hongtana nyonsor sei ko zo ganda thoni tanzin che tuk yatam tendi ki tanzin ta kono ke sidang ke kalsa ko thana mambu sung sung te nonu ni ta to de 간이 이미 되네데 그 톱 되네데게 대한 네파 가줄라 펜도 이미 되네데게 또 되네게 돈함 대이 네파드네 그 가르스 그렇고 주는 보지 같이 되게 펜도 이미.
So the veterans who are having these PTSD disorders, when you use these emotional regulating methods for them to treat the mental problems, what you found is the most effective method, and why?
Oh, yeah. I'll say that, so there's possibly not a most effective method. We probably haven't found what that most effective method is, but we have found that the one I just talked about, cognitive reappraisal, seems to be very effective, and not only among veterans, among everybody. It's one of those emotion regulation strategies that work well. Another one is acceptance, which Robin is going to talk about on the third day, so I'm going to let her explain it to a much deeper extent, but it's basically acceptance is very similar to certain mindfulness and meditation practices where you just let the emotion be. You kind of let it like a leaf on a stream rolling down the stream. You don't get involved with it. You don't push it away. You don't pull on it. Those two seem to be very good.
Tenza tanda mangmi surba ani tanda sem kangi yedde tanda PTSD sigdo ngonzo ani kengi jelaki ani sem chugjon se siriyo tenza da dila ani tablom yakshu diresha se yedde tanda ngonzo ki ani zuzun de ni de yedde ke mes imbina ani ko yongdala ani peju che de jik tanjing ngonzo ki she de yadi ani chadi yores ta dima imba shembaji ani konzo ki tanda ani gom ki juni ani acceptance sidu chambala da sem gnangla ani kangi ri khandi ji sharwi bena sharwa dila ani thedo maji beche ko timur shaw se ya yores ani di khadda daw yores la bena thanda ani chiga nangju kom din juk nanglo themba ni sha ki kom se ya de do was che da din zo da daw yores ko sem ki ani nyong sor si yun re sem ki nyong wa din zo ani ya ke yung du chambala ko ke jus kewa nang shi ani ko khale ko ru du na dus pa lo sha sho special sha na ani shingdong lo ma jik sal hung kaps la ko khande shi hung du din nang shi ani rawang chi ji pa ta sho se ke en din de gom ke tablam din yore chi za din zo ninga dus te wi mena di ping yo so ro yores ta di pya di tanda jingi je la ke sem tu gyun se di za mai ba ani sem tu gyun ri ma cha la ani ko ni ba chi pa thwe de sha du yores las
ye tiwali tata nyongzor da dewe di chida nyongzor de la mambo jungyor de ine dendur chiwa da dede kaso la ngamra yoya da dede chi nyongzor jungyor di kazan gengi tarin de su yunu mene shida chi koma su ine kazan gengi peda jadu samala pene mi gyusha lu nye chi iba ina di nye la da kola ngamra sonda jungyor wa ngamra yoya didi chaya dunda la ani ngazu ki amjo la earphone dine kyo ni ngarge langa ki didi she tu zuna tangche ngamra di chaya da didi chigi yores kisi di che bayi na ngarge laya di ngazu nangbe nguni she bayi na ani mige we cho laur be nimo be chol che dugu yores di sabla ngarge ki sabla ani poba laya di ani chik poba kechu bayi na ani dingi chele chikpa do chi ligi mi duwes poba se di kyo ki jumba la nga che tuku ri samsam di poba ri diyorwa ngarge se di kole nga yaga yu se di ngarge ri diyorwa imba insa ngarge la lang bayi na 내가 거기 안다디 차바이나 치수 가게 라이디기 거기 셈 나로라 바자 두자지 샤야기 얘기 드리고 통고도 생바인사 뽑아기 가게기 sabla 뽑아도 오지 알랑바이나 아니 칼로 셈 안다게디 디스 뇨로 되다 군이 제일 찍어도 오리자니 탑란 디 표시 지기요 말레스 디지다니 지당 알게다 뽑아라야디 코나주기 나로 셈들라 만다오지 샤기요 말레스.
So, in your presentation, you talk about anxiety, anxious moments, and also yesterday we discussed about anxiety also. And also yesterday, when we were discussing about the anxiety, you said that when you are in an anxious moment or anxious situation, sometimes you use this music and other means to create or generate anger or in your mind, so that the anxious or the anxiety that is there goes down. So from Buddhist point of view, generating anger for like purposefully is a negative thing, is a wrong method. So instead of anger or arrogance, why you don't use confidence as an antidote?
Sure. I would absolutely agree that it would be just, I mean, I don't know, for specific people, it's probably varies depending on which is more effective for them to do that. I think that to generate courage is equally as effective, and to generate confidence equally as effective. But I would say that generating those things for a lot of people might be more difficult. It's very easy to, just like we've all talked about, it's easy to generate anger. So yeah, so I'll just use the example of an athlete. It's very easy for an athlete to sit in their locker room before the event and to think about all the negative things about the other team and how the team has yelled or called them names in the press or has made fun of them, and to generate that anger. And I think for a lot of athletes, that's easier than it is to generate courage per se. That's more of to me, it's a little bit more difficult. I think you can get anger in 2 seconds, and you can go out there and then use that anger to try to win the game. It basically, and I want to point out the reason why it would be considered adaptive is probably the motivation, the energy it generates is what they're using for the adaptive part, not necessarily all the thinking part of it.
그래서 디 가서 그뭐 좋은 신레스 저다 아니 녜도 삼주 제빈베나 아니 지금 보와다 아니 가서 닝톱스에 든조 페주 제빈베나 아니 고 anxiety스에 산다다 낭다 크리지오와 제가 든조라 아니 마차야레 펜도 요르 삼고도스 임베네야 아니 미망부지 낭로라 아니 고 내당 만다오 용기에 차네 아니 든조야 랑야라 보와다 닝톱스에 든조 아니야 랑야라 간레 카고 용기요레스 아고 콩도스에 디탄다 앵거스 콩도스에 든조 아니 고 람상 아니 지 랑초조 카르제카시 낭로 랑초조 인데 차요레스 페차샤빈베나 아니 제모테니 루하 주빈베나 데 루하파 셴바디냠도다 두슨 텐도르 체비캅슬라 톱구요레스 톱고두 잠발라 아니 콘주 카르치그스라비나 아니 루하 파조 디콜라 아니 네주 두와 든조 상야 텐소 치두 잠발라 텐소 치비 겸젠 테네 콩도 사용요레스 콩도 사비 겸젠 테네 아니 지가 제모체 캅슬라 아니 딘데 콩도 사비 겸젠 테네 레베케 아니 따지 루다 셈기 카르시기네 슈크시기네 콘도 네바시기도 딘조 페주 체체 간다만다 아니 제모딕 나로 수수 제가 토베케 페주 치기오레스 제자다 단다 콩 카시기 나로라 콩도 디라야 레라오 유베케 겸젠 테네 아니 딘데 아니 페주 체데와 딘데 용기오레스 이나 지탄 아니 단다 confidence 다 카레슬라 딘조 포와다 시에 딘조 아니 뉴버티고 퉁기 유기레스
las ani nge troate tata ani tungsa semla na semsor sene mo ani nong semla nasa sene mo kange ani sem mede wa chale ji ro ani te rai de tang khoyog thoni chebar chim ro ji yon ro ji de se de ro pena thongse le yo ta ani thongche no ro ji je che ko wa ina ani sem kange to ani ji sem mede wa chan ro ye de rai de ji thongche no ro je cha mo ro ji 다 노지 되지 단 코리오 부산에 상로 동아이나 네지 벤조 야제 침보 송대 코요 다 노지도 근데 지금 세례 야제 효 침보 송대 코요 되라 아니 다다디 생은 나사도 강의도 제자 모아도지 용되게 요 드리로지 생되게 제자 뜻이 지진도지 아니 제가 컨트롤도지 정도가 요 나스
So from my understanding it seems that there's a difference in the demographic difference or the geographic differences when we talk about this occurrence of people with mental illness. For example, it seems that if you compare between city and village life, it seems that the problem is more kind of widespread in the cities. And also if you compare between like rich and poor countries, it seems that the rich countries have more problems with mind-related illness. So do you think the same way? Or if this is the case, then what could be the reason?
So I would say that I don't have a broad understanding of that literature. I'm not super familiar with it, but I do know that there are mental disorders such as schizophrenia that occur at the same rate no matter where you measure them. So I can go measure them among this crowd, I can go measure them in America, it's going to be 1% of the population. Similarly with things like bipolar disorder. The things that differ are some disorders, other types of disorders, like I think the rates of depression differ by country, and I think the rates of certain anxiety disorders differ by country. So that's one that's one thing I'll say. I'll say secondarily that we measure mental disorders in a specific way in Western science. So our ideas of what is a mental disorder could vary across us. So we might be talking about very different things.
Imbina Carriores Lavimbina, Ane Semki Kangi Nazak Nang Rikashi Pesha, Schizophrenia, Ledusamangazun, and Guyones Edita. Chesa di Yudingi, di Ane Zambulin and Sera Dovimbina, Jika Tonjer, the Tonsek Yawa Mewa, Shallow Novian Yawa Mewa, Mega Jaja Chicks Chick, Ane Zambulin Sajo Samuel Chibayores. Teganashi, Ane Bipolar Sidu Sambala, Ane Cabre Tanda Indigo, Cabre Tanda Maim Chaduni, the Dua, and Zoimbina, Ane Jaja Chibayores. That Dimai Babeshan, Yimugris or Rudzo. The Ganashi, any Tanda Nangrak Kyudini, Tangrak Nanglo, Nanta Yondan Rimangudua. Just that the Rikashi, any Gigakashi Nangola, any Ma Yoda, Gigap Shembak Nangola, Rikashi Ma Yoda, the Deki, any Chawa Yudi, just a Diko Kuryu Chidaba Chik Nangola, Nedan Chidaba Chik, Latine, any Chundigu Kangacha Yoris, Chik this. New the Karis Labi Menachetan, and Jusami Kejashi, and Sam Gangia, the Nazas, Kejashi, or the Chik Chimbena, and Manzuki, Nubjok, Nangola, and Kosuzuki, and Sam Gangia, the Muzin Chitan Tumumo in Pachida, and Taxi Chitan Tumumo in Bajo, the Gorist, Chita de la Dusambala, and Chichin and Manda in Sigris, Manzuki, Sam Gangi, La Dusambala, Kangi Munzi Chitanda, Kiransuki, Sam Gangi, Dusamba, Munzi Chitandi, and Chawayoda, and the Kangi Sigris.
I think that. Yeah, I mean, this is pure speculation. I think that there's different things that cause, there's different causes, and then there's different ways of treating those disorders among different cultures. And so if we're talking about something like the stresses that lead to anxiety disorders, there are certain populations that are, like, let's take post-traumatic stress disorder, for instance, that are highly traumatized. There's a lot of trauma that happens in that population, so there's going to be higher rates of post-traumatic stress disorder. There's other populations that say have higher levels of treatment of specific disorders. So they have a lot of people who are focused on treating the disorders that pop up, like, for instance, depression. And then treatment is a valued thing. People, it's considered wise and good to go get treatment. There's other cultures where it's not. You're not supposed to talk about your disorders. You're not supposed to talk about your suffering, and you keep it to yourself. They're going to have higher rates of those disorders. They're not going to get them treated.
Just the Gigab condition been a Jizo condition been a Semgi Kangi Denzula, Semgi Kangi Richik by Imbina, and a dig Jujin, Logano, Young Sigres, Pejana, and a Yimuk Naza Imbina. And Jacob Shembachin on Yimuk Nazek Yongen dida, Jacob Shembachin on Yimuk Naza Yongen, and Ken the Loga Yon Sigres. The Ganashita Yimuk Naza Imbina, Yimuk Naza, the Chutab Chica do Zambala, and Sharnuk Jacob Susu, Chizo Manda Nangola, and Chutab Chitan, and Mandao Yores. The Ganashi, and Chutab Chitan Mandao Yo, some Masiba, Chuya, the Kachimbu, and the Zimazisia, the Mangu Yung Yores, Pecha Shavi Benata, Jig. Tanda any King Jelak took you some Masada, Toche, any Kangi Tedeviki, any Mangmisulba, the Dinik Masada, that Jim to Jagak no Kangi Mangu, you decide the Zuk Nangola, and Tanda Kangi Jelak, and another said, the Tujon said, the Mangu, or the Nimina, Gigab Kashik Nangola, the Kachembuzi, Ditola, any Yamship in Mangu, Shungu Suntanchi, and a Kyotab Mangu Ching to Zambala, and a Co Chitan Tango Mangu Yobimina, and a Tayak said the Mangu Yosonza, Tanga Nudoya. 기가 과시 다 지소 과시 나로라 샘기 나자시야디 주도시라 제야요 말디 셰야요 말다 소소수 에 냐데 오레스니 딘데 나로 껴타 마지베 줌센 때네 민볼 찬 지빈베나 고 유야드 뉴뉴임베나 안젤 장가 마주베 줌 껴타 마지베 줌센 때네 장가 망고 차도야 딘데 용구요레스.
Well, let's give Matthew one more round of applause and thank you.